Alrighty, so let's check out where we're heading here in week 6 attendance as far as our decision app, because it's important to understand where this hits in our schedule and what's going to be our deliverables that we need to do, and we're going to add to that deliverable today, and you'll pretty much see me focus on for the next couple weeks, unless I have to cover something else, the decision making app. So I'm going to look just here. We're in week 6. And so now that we've finished our step 1, and I gave everyone who had completed the attendance a little more time. And I hope to see more of you come through. I understand that this process can feel intimidating. It's honestly really important. And I think part of it is just doing it. Okay, so having said that, now in week 6, we don't have a decision step. Okay, we have some new content about table rendering and local storage, but then in week 7, we'll have our next step. So what this really means is that part of week's step 1, I gave you an option here, was that if you didn't have output on the page, you could output the object, the return object on the decision, and then you'll need to have completed that before you start on step 2. So just to let you know for you, and you'll see this when I write up step 2, that needs to be done. Now the other thing is anything that you ran into that wasn't working or that I gave you feedback to clarify, you'll need to also have done that, because that you need walking into step 2 to have working code that meets the requirements. Now, one of the things, and I'm going to come back to attendance now, that I know, and I said this in my video for the step 1, is that writing that logic is a little more challenging, because for us, our carbon footprint just outputted a number. So what I had you think about was like, how would your app make a decision, right? What would that process look like? So if I was looking at mine, right, I've already been playing with it. Oh, no, we'll look at that. We'll talk about that in a minute. But in my case, for my step 1, so the decision for me was, what kind of workout would I do based on my energy, the day, and the temperature, right? So in this case, right, and this is where it's like, okay, here's my decision that came back. Now, how I wrote code to create that, right, was different for each of us, because our decisions are different. And so, but what's important here is that you have some type of decision that you're making, and that is different than what we've done on the carbon footprint app. And this is where you're creating some new code that you haven't seen before based on your concept. And I've had a couple students come talk to me about this, and it's been, in my experience, pretty helpful for them to do that. Right, and I can already see in mine, and I said this, that I still have work to do. So I thought, you know what, this week 6 is a good time to do this. Okay, so just to be clear, if you didn't get output, or if you just put some boilerplate but wasn't actually dynamic in creating that output, you'll need to work on that before we get to step 2, okay? If you don't have some kind of decision output from that, then you'll need to think about that. So let's come back now to week 6. So what are we going to do here? What we're going to do is add a section into your README file. Okay, so to start this work, to do this work, you're going to take your README file and you're going to add a section into it, right? That is for your decision logic, okay? And it'll be after the decision focus, which, by the way, if you didn't have decision focus, because most of you got it because I gave the example, but if for some reason you didn't, go back and look, that was part of the documentation. So that's part of what I'll look at for the grade for this one. I probably gave you feedback, but just make sure it's there. I'm going to show you my output in a minute. Okay, so we're adding a decision logic heading. Okay, so heading meaning a markdown heading. So you explain your decision logic. Like, this is the most important part, right? This is where you translate, right? And really, you're either translating the code you wrote or the code you want to write, right? So write it in English if you didn't have it in JavaScript, and if you had it in JavaScript, then you just get to write it in English. It depends on where you're at. Now, by the way, this file should have been called decision.js. That's the other thing, is naming things. We do have updated names. Now, go function by function, and in this case, it should have been broken into helper functions, which mimics the whole idea of what we did in the carbon footprint, right? So, like for me, determine energy score, right? And then I ultimately had one, so I had several little helper functions that I wrote. Again, I have, since I recorded that last video, already added to my logic because I realized I wanted to do a little more. So, and this is part of development. As you do a first round, you iterate over that, and you're like, you know, I can make this better. So explain your final decision, right? So describe how your main decision works, right? How make sure you explain in special conditions that produce the custom message, or what fallback or default you will use here, okay? So, and then provide examples, right? So run your app, you know, at least 3 times, but in this case, you could just read your code, whichever one works, and provide examples. Like, so here's my inputs, right? These are, when we're looking at the page, right, for the breakdown here, that's what those represent. And then here's the output that was generated, and do this, right, for at least several pieces of your decision logic, right? So once you've completed all this section, then read through, make sure there's any issues, and then push, do the Git workflow and push that to your private repo. Here is your message, is updated README. Okay, so go through that. So now, what we're going to do now, so first, and let me just show you, matter of fact, I have it out, and I'm going to show you in a minute how to do this. So here's mine, and it's my, and now where this is going to end up is where I'll show you next. Okay, so here was my decision focus from before, and so, sorry, oh, I have it in there twice, I gotta fix that. So now I broke this into my decision logic, right? So I have the logic flow for the energy, right? The day, this is the logic flow for that. The temperature, this is a logic flow. And then my final decision is here, okay? And then here's the examples of my output. So a high energy work, high energy hit work day, hit work, a rest day, a standard workout day. Okay, so what I did is I gave, here's 3 different outputs I would expect from my logic, okay? So that's an example, and you're going to have access, but again, this is just there for you to see an example of what yours should have included in it. Okay, and what I added since that other recording was I wrote more logic in my final decision output based on some common outputs I would want to handle a little more specifically. Like if I was doing an intense, matter of fact, that's what it is. If the energy is intense and I'm riding a bike, right, and the location is outside, then I did a custom message. As a matter of fact, I think I can show you that. I already did this here. So like if it's Saturday, my energy is like 90, feel really good, it's nice outside, then my message was do a long ride, try to go over 35 miles, you got this. So I did like a, you know, an encouraging message. Oh, back. Yeah, so anyway, go back here. Right, so this is what, and this really helps you think about, like, how does my app, either does it make that decision now, or how do I want it to make the decision? So if you knew you needed to work on this, this is a place to do it. And if you knew you just, and if you feel good about it, this would be a place just to document that. All right, so once you get that, that's in your private repo, just to be clear. So now what you're going to do is you're going to share with everybody. So this, by the way, the other one was 35 points, right? So this one is 35 points. You're going to organize your project files for sharing, right? So not for, because what we've been doing in the private repo, we're going to move something over, which is your README file, but also I'm going to have you do a print screen, right? So what I did here is I got my screen up, and I think I just took a print. Yeah, I put, and I just refresh it real quick. I just took a print screen. Now you could also include your output here. I could have done that, but take a print screen. If you don't know how to do a print screen, search how to take a print screen for your particular operating system. And then what you're going to want to do, and in this case, you're going to want to put it in your public repo. Okay, so let's come back here. Okay, so, and I did resize it. I generally recommend if you have a large resolution, you do that as well, and you'll see mine in a minute. Okay, so in your public repo, right, in your public, right, where we've been sharing our URLs, what you'll do here is on your computer or on the code space, create a new folder called W6. Okay, so this is in your public repo. Okay, and then copy the updated. So whatever came out of this step is copy that README file into that W6 directory, right? And then run your step one, right? So now this is one thing you're doing, and then run your step one. This is what you see me doing here, okay? Your step one, and take a print screen or a screenshot, whichever way you think about it. I've called it both, and then showing your decision output. Oh, actually, I did say decision output, so I actually needed to modify mine. And then save that screenshot into the W6 and give it a file name. Don't let it have the standard file name. Just good practice here, because standard file names for print screens are long and they have spaces in them. So name it something like this, and then use the command line to add new files to your staging area, and then commit them with week 6 attendance files, and then push them to your public repo. Okay, and this is how you're going to actually share them, right? So if you're in any of my other classes, especially 82, you know how to do this. If you're new to this, no big deal. So here's how you know, so for me, that W6 up in the repo for the public, okay, so again, that you've copied over your README file, you have your print screen, whatever that is, and so in this case, we're going to have you not attach these images, we're going to have you embed them. So if you click in here, here's my step one. Okay, so let's look at the instruction, because I actually did give you this, right? So navigate on GitHub to week 6. This is what I did, the W6. And then click on your step one and view it, right? And then right click, copy image address. And then in Canvas, we'll do this next step. Okay, so in here, I have clicked on my PNG file, right clicked. I'm going to copy image address here. Okay, and then in Canvas, I'm going to come back here, right? I'm going to hit reply. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say my print screen or screenshot. Okay, and then I'm going to do this, and I'm going to, oh, actually, no, my bad. And actually, if you know HTML a little bit, you could do this as well, but you could do upload image. But in this case, you're not going to add, you're going to go to URL. You're going to paste whatever that was, okay? My print screen for step one. Okay, good. Embed the image. That's where you get the points here, right? So now it's embedded. Cool. So now we'll all get to see that, right? And now what we could do is just go ahead and say my updated README. Okay, now here we're just going to provide the link. Now we could actually just provide that as part of the link, right? Or we could put, as long as it's linked. So how do you do that? You come over here, you go back to that week 6, you click on that file, you go to the URL, copy here, come back to the discussion, right? So in this case, this is what I almost consider an ugly URL because this is so long, right? So, but that would be okay, but the other way you could do this is actually just click on this here, like part of this, updated README, external link, do that, cool. And one thing that'll be nice here, right? Well, by the way, I'll have you do a little bit of writing, but just to show you the reply, what it would look like is that should open in a new window. Okay, so that's just logistically how you do that, and in this case this is what I went over. Okay, if you attach it, I take off some points because the idea is to understand how to embed it from a source we already have. Okay, So this is where I did the README file, right? So I didn't even talk about doing headers, so do it in here. So now in your post, okay, so there'll be a post that you'll need to do, as include if you need any help writing your logic, your JavaScript for your decision logic, or just your experience of doing this work. Like maybe you already, just where were you at? So if you don't need help, which is totally okay too, but if you want some help, ask for it. But also talk about where you're at with your decision logic code at this point. Okay, so all of that work is worth 30 points, 35, and then 30 points come from your reply. This is where it's really important because these connections that we have, this helps build community, gives you a sense of, who else is in the class, where they're at, and how they're working on things. Right, so select the student, and again, select somebody that doesn't have already a a reply. It just helps them, and if they ask for help, attempt to provide it or tell them how you would approach the writing of the logic or whatever else they wrote. Okay, so do that. Okay, so that is the work for this week. I have already got the following week done as far as ready to go as well this week. I'm going to review it one more time before I publish it, but there'll be some things we'll end up adding into the HTML, but also you could think about as we move into week 6, we're going to end up doing this also in our decision app, and this is where it's important to really start paying attention to thinking about how would I implement this, because you will need to implement these things once we get to step 2. Okay? All right, reach out. Remember, there is help available to you, right? Brianna's here. Zach is also available. Zach is listed in Simple Syllabus as well. So we have 2 tutors for this class. Please reach out. Come see me, whatever it takes for, whatever your needs are. So here, this link here actually is to the drop-in. These are Zach's hours. So if you go to 93, you can see Zach's hours, and then you can see for 93 as well the tutoring that Brianna has that I've also listed in Canvas. But the important part of this is that get help, right? Because classes like this, it is really helpful to have somebody to talk through things with. Like I said, I've had a couple of students do that with me, and I feel like they've told me it's been helpful. All right, talk to you later.